Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, thank you for this generous introduction. I'm honored to be here today. Needless to say how important this institution is, not only for the United States, but also for my country. And the leadership and scholarship of the U.S. Institute of Peace has made lots of difference. And I owe a special debt of gratitude to Robinson West, chairman of the Institute, and to Richard Solomon, its president. I understand that Richard is stepping down after 19 years of extraordinary service. And even from us, as far as away as Georgia, we can clearly see what you have achieved, what you have done, how important your contribution to the world peace and to more sustainable U.S. foreign policy as well as world politics has been. And it has special meaning to Georgians, also to 500,000 people in Georgia that have been expelled from regions illegally occupied by the Russian Federation. Certainly, I'm very grateful to Damon Wilson for this very generous introduction, but also for the role that the Atlantic Council plays in making things transparent, clear, and in also helping out situations where we need advice, friends, authoritative opinion. Ladies and gentlemen, I came here to talk about the wave of revolutions, changes, and protests that the world has witnessed over the past year and is still witnessing today. The media dubbed these movements as the Arab Spring, but they span far beyond the Middle East and the spring season, respecting no limits of time, geography, or culture. These revolutions and protests remind all of us of freedom, democracy, and accountability matter, and even that they matter more than anything else in the world. More than cultural, political, religious, or social differences. More than fake stabilities and geographic borders. They inspire citizens from the most diverse backgrounds to unite and to undertake the bravest of actions. They move nations and reshape the security environment. Today we are barely 1 year past the moment when an unknown Tunisian citizen named Mohamed Bouazizi immolated himself to protest against injustice, unfairness, lack of absence of hope for him and for his society. 13 months later, we note with amazement how this isolated act of despair has changed the course of history and our perception of the world. Tunisia's dictator Ben Ali was toppled, Hosni Mubarak is gone, Gaddafi is gone, governments all around the region exceeded a diverse extent to public demands for reforms. And the protests grew well beyond the Middle East, including the streets of Moscow, St. Petersburg, and so many other Russian cities. We can barely grasp all that has happened over these past 13 months, nor can we know where these diverse events will lead. We cannot foresee which of these movements will produce Jeffersons and which ones will produce Vladimir Lenins or Khomeinis, which will lead to democracy and which to disappointment and tyranny and despotism. Just beyond these windows, over on the Washington Mall, disoriented tourists that are looking for directions will greet, I guess, not with much relief, you are here. Unfortunately, on this side of the Constitution Avenue, where diplomats and scholars try to anticipate the flow of world events, there are not even such markers. Yet, even without a clear map, we can turn for guidance to a series of events that share several common elements for the violent revolutions of the late 80s to the color revolutions of the early 2000s, including the one in my own country that CNN graciously, by accident, baptized as Rose Revolution. My dear friends, Georgia's experience does not provide a transferable model for many countries that are known or will sooner or later know pro-Western uprising. There was no freedom textbook for us, and there is no textbook for our friends ever written. But by reflecting of our post-revolution experience, we might now well gain an appreciation of the diverse challenges these societies of transition face. Our peaceful popular revolution brought the power of young people who want to change the fate of their country, whom I was privileged to lead. Obviously, we had no clear answers how to fix the country, and turned out to be even worse shape than we had thought. In 2003, Georgia was an utterly failed state. Government couldn't supply 80% of the time in winter with electricity. Police was not only corrupt, but basically criminalized. Government bureaucracy was cynical and was basically characterized by, they were basically thugs, they were not real civil servants. Regional warlords had more power than public officials. Crime was literally at every corner, at every street. The education system was crippled by corruption. To top it all up, we lived in a dangerous neighborhood which was increasingly revisionist Russian Federation at our doors. Aware that half measures would be useless, that our window for reforms would be small, we adopted a whole-of-government approach seeking to radically transform multiple institutions simultaneously. All at once, we undertook to change the police, the tax collection, the customs, the security services, the energy sector, and the education system. Our overreaching priority was a full frontal assault against corruption. Corruption was a virus that has infected all our institutions, rotting and crippling them. Corruption was also the main focus of public anger. Just yesterday, the World Bank issued a major new study entitled Fighting Corruption in Public Services, chronicling Georgia's reforms, which details what our government did to fight corruption and how Georgia's experience might inform anti-corruption efforts in our country. Indeed, as I was told in the World Bank, they have published several books in the past on corruption problems in that another region or in that another country. This is the first time ever the World Bank has published a book on overcoming corruption somewhere. And that's quite a breakthrough for them as well. There are summaries of this study outside the hall, but let me quote to you what is perhaps the most heartening observation the World Bank made. Georgia's success destroys the myth that corruption is cultural and gives hope to reformers everywhere who aspire to clean up the public services. The cliché that subcultures, people or religions are inherently corrupt or allergic to transparency has been proven absolutely wrong in my country. In one blow, we fired 16,000 police officers. The country stayed without police for several months. Traffic accident rates went down. Crime rates likely went down, to the extent that we were starting to wonder whether we need police at all. And then we recruited a new police force that, after 5% rate enjoyed by its predecessors enjoyed 86% confidence from the population. We created a single nationwide computer-scored merit-based admission test for our university to end the decade-long practice that made bribes the key entry qualification. The going rate had started at about $8,000, more than an average Georgian annual income. We began to apply tax laws. Our ambition was clear, to give the people the sense that they own their state. And it could not succeed without a whole of society's approach. Any change of governments had to be accompanied by a radical social transformation in order to make efficient and sustainable. Soviet Union and post-Soviet regimes, like all authoritarian systems, based their survival by nurturing the divisions of the society. People were artificially opposed to each other at every level in every field. The different religious, social, and ethnic groups were made to be constant rivals, and politics was understood as an art of manipulation, fear, and hatred. So our first task was to embrace multiculturalism and differences. We developed an affirmative action program that covered all spheres from higher education to law enforcement bodies. This approach is not always popular among certain social institutions, but we are determined to making it core priority of our action, because at stake is democratic identity of our nation. Last year, unfortunately against the will of almost all political parties and NGOs, we passed a law that grants legal status to all paid communities in Georgia. The Soviet Union and the post-Soviet regimes had another characteristic: absolute centralization. So we initiated a vast decentralization program, invested in regional development, infrastructure, and spectacularly empowered local authorities. As a result, regions that were once abandoned became the most striking examples of development. And people feel everywhere that they have a stake in their own country's fate, not only thousands of thousands of privileged citizens living in one state in our capital. Ladies and gentlemen, the main achievement of the last 8 years, the key to all our successes, was not much function of government, but of the Georgian people themselves. Our institutional revolution was enabled by the mental revolution that took place in our country. Only mental revolution could lead to the Western transformation of our society. Today, Georgians have totally changed the way they think of themselves, of their prerogatives, of their responsibilities, and of their relationships to society and government. Of course, many of our reforms have not produced the results we have hoped to achieve, and we are still very much at work in progress. But nobody can reverse or suppress the transformation that happened in Georgia. Neither us nor anybody else. If I had to sum up the lessons I can draw from our experience and share with our friends elsewhere, I would quote the following poets: "No matter how beautiful and moving popular uprisings are, the real revolution occurs when, after the cameras from CNN, BBC, and the others have left the country. It consists in a long and difficult process of reform that follows. Only a whole of the government and whole of society approach to reform can bring tangible and enduring results. The reform of the judiciary, police, tax collection, customs, political class, electoral code, and education system should not be implemented individually, but as a part of a complete project of social transformation. If even one of these areas is left untouched, then the virus of citizens will undermine the credibility of entire effort. You need to put your popularity at risk right away. When you attack interest groups, they bite back, and you will face difficult times. We had our shares of demonstration opposition. I had to resign before the end of my first term in order to win a new popular mandate to keep on the path of reforms. But when you are carried to power by popular uprising, the greatest risk you face is your own inaction, the temptation to temporize in order to enjoy your original popularity. After a revolution, people feel empowered and impatient. They want quick results, and once they become disillusioned and cynical, you have lost the opportunity for change. Because in order to succeed, you need the people to be an active part of your reforms. The citizens, after all, are the real motor of transformation. Woodrow Wilson had it right when he says liberty has never come from government. Liberty has always come from the subjects of it. So that's my tribute primarily to Georgian people. Those who thought that corruption was inherently Georgian phenomenon, they severely underestimated my people. Those who thought that by nature we were criminal, and now we are the safest country in Europe, they severely underestimated my people. Those who thought that Georgian people could be bought by fake promises, some breathtaking illusions, not through real big things, at the elections, they severely underestimated and underestimate my people. Those who think that Georgian people will ever give up a very difficult, full of resistance road to fighting for freedom in exchange of illusionary golden cages, promised comfort, they severely underestimate my nation, my people. The main thing we learned that reforms are important, but the fight for reforms is never finished. The biggest mistake we could make would be to contemplate our rankings by international organizations or read the World Bank book, feel smug about our successes and conclude that we have made it once and for all. It would undermine all our achievements, and it's why the reforms should never stop. Governing is a process of learning, questioning, adaptation, and change. This is what every authoritarian regime always fails to understand. We will not make this mistake in Georgia. My dear friends, revolutions are fought and won by the citizens of these countries. But all of us, international community, should do what we can help. In Georgia's case, a wide range of international think tanks and NGOs, education programs, scholarships helped sow the seeds of our revolution. Ever since, we have done that we can to provide advice and assistance to those in other countries who are trying to forge a similar path, just as we have benefited greatly from the experience of others, especially NDI and IRI, which have shown such profound dedication to Georgia and which continue to show vision and courage in other parts of the world, as we see today in Egypt. We might have disagreements sometimes, but I want to assure NDI, IRI, NAD, Freedom House, and all the major actors of the democracy community of this town, the vibrant part of Washington, that Georgia will always be like their home. We know too much that we owe to their commitment and their dedication to freedom. And at a time when many major powers are struggling with sluggish economies and the government deficits, when there is an understandable temptation to cut back unsupporting such activities, I would like to remind you what a high-value investment the support for democracy is. The movement toward democracy does not solve every problem or enhance security in every case, but on balance, we will all be more secure with fewer dictatorships and more democracies. When aspiring populations are free to live their lives, practice their trades, raise their children, voice their ideas, and praise their grievances, display dreams for the kinds of leaders who sow ethnic hatreds, harbor terrorists, or wage aggressions. Ladies and gentlemen, we can compare the sudden upheavals of 2011 and the ongoing protest to that of what Nassim Nicholas Taleb has called black swans, improbable, high-impact events which amaze us as outliers when they appear, yet in retrospect seem obvious and inevitable. They take us by surprise and force us to recalculate our sense of the possible. They are redefining an international arena, redistributing the cards between regional and global players. See, from our part of the world, two radical different attitudes emerge, embodied by two specific regional powers. On the one hand, the Russian Federation reacted with panic and outrage to the Arab Spring and tries everything it can to prevent any international support to the democracy movements anywhere. On the other, Turkey asserts itself as a role model for the post-revolutionary countries and the main friend of freedom lovers for the Muslim world. On the one hand, the government of Vladimir Putin desperately tries to hold the progress of history. On the other, the administration of Prime Minister Erdogan that decides to embrace the evolutions of the world. Two very different prime ministers. And it is not a coincidence if Russian influence is decreasing while Turkish leadership is growing every day in the region. This is a lesson and a message of hope. There is no future for global powers playing against the will of their own people. Ladies and gentlemen, as most of you know, on Monday I had the honor to meet President Obama in the Oval Office. I was impressed by his vision and his knowledge of dynamics of my region. Of course, I was pleased to hear him telling the media that Georgia is the role model for reforms, democracy, and transparency in the region, and praising the institution building that has taken place. These were humbling words to hear, and I'm grateful to the President for his unwavering support. But we could never have achieved so much without the United States, its leadership, its diplomacy, its NGOs. On Monday, President Obama wore deeper and continued engagement in pursuing a free trade agreement between Georgia and the United States. It's a major breakthrough for us. We're a booming economy. We're the easiest place to do business in Eastern Central Europe and post-Soviet world, according to World Bank. We have the world's fastest customs procedure, the world's fastest property registration, the world's fastest company registration. We have the one window principle where to get a passport in Georgia, it takes roughly 10 minutes, driver license few minutes, to get customs clearance for any kind of cargo, 7 to 10 minutes. But I wonder what we need passports for, because later you don't have even to take it out from your pocket to get passport gates in the airport once you have it in your pocket for electronic chips. So you don't even need the passports. So we move forward. But the free trade agreement will be very important. We also got strong support from President Obama on our NATO membership application. These kind of commitments make our democracy safer and also explain why America is and will remain the indispensable leader of the free world. As I stressed to President Obama, we are determined to return to the security contributor to the Western community of nations we aspire to join, not just as security consumer. This is why we have deployed almost 1,800 soldiers to Afghanistan, to Helmand province without any caveats, with losses that we incurred in terms of killed and wounded. And certainly we had them there, and we nearly, as I said, we nearly are doubling our commitment. This is not easy for any country, including that of my country, or any population, but it is simply necessary. And I will finish with this. The main message I wanted to carry with me to Washington is this one. There is no such thing as American decline. Despite the economic problems and the doubts about the future, 2011 has shown that the values on which America is based are on the rise. People all around the world are ready to risk their lives and their values. Their lives for these values. This is a fantastic message of hope, and this is what really matters in the end of the day. It means that authoritarian models might look strong and present impressive growth rates, but they propose no credible and universal terms. It was a mistake to proclaim the end of history after the fall of the Berlin Wall, and to think that the progress of liberal democratic values in the world would not be challenged anymore. Let's not make the opposite mistake now. Let's not give it to pessimists, depression, and relativism. Let's not overlook the universal call for freedom that we are witnessing in the most diverse part of the world. Let's not allow cynical people or isolationists to prevail. Those people who think that, well, America's age is over, because America is not an empire. It's not certainly an empire of the past. It's an idea. It's a force for good. The other day I was together with my friends at the Base Camp Summit in California, and we were in a room with a number of people recently arrived in America 1, 2, 3 years ago. Like people from Middle East, Korea, other regions. And you know, I was looking at them, and I relate to my own experience. I came to America on congressional fellowship in the 90s. I lived in a basement in Astoria, Queens, studied law. I had hardly money to even get bananas by the end of the month from a neighboring grocery store. They always knew me and would $10 some bananas when I would come back to the month. It was my scholarship was. I was poor. But you know, within 2 years, I was already working for a major law firm in 42nd Street. I had an apartment on Central Park West, but more than that, I had this sense of entitlement and unlimited opportunities for the future. I had the sense that in this country everything is possible. I was looking at this crowd 2 days ago in California, and I was thinking, look at that, they're genuinely out of this country. They talk American, their body language is American, they think American. They're almost American. And with all due respect, try to go to those countries and become in 2 years, say, Chinese. Good luck with that. Only 2 generations. And that's the force of America. That's the compelling force of this idea, what I'm talking about. And that's why, because this is the call of America, that's the true motor and true meaning of historical importance of this country. Thank you so much.
Mr. President, thank you very much. Terrific remarks, and a terrific time to think about what is happening in the world, what's happening in North Africa and the Middle East from the perspective of a country that's more than 8 years into your revolution. You caveated your remarks with that there's no textbook, the model in Georgia is not transferable. But I think you pulled out some important lessons. The one thing that quite struck me was that the greatest risk you face is inaction. You lose the window of opportunity for change. So I wanted to begin our conversation. I've got a couple questions and I'll turn to the audience. For the question about the U.S. role, the region, in Georgia. Well, first, on the United States, I think it was terrific for the American audience to hear from your perspective the U.S. as an indispensable leader of the free world, for pushback against American decline. But part, I think, of what the United States is struggling with right now is how does it play the right supporting role in the transitions in the Middle East and North Africa. And if you think back to the Rose Revolution, at a certain point in time, the United States was quite close to Edward Shevardnadze, very concerned about your activities on the street, about others, had a known partner, a known quantity, someone that we worked with closely through the end of the Soviet Union, and then in Georgia, and in many respects was reluctant to back away from that relationship. How do you, thinking of how the United States went from its posture in Georgia at a critical time, what kind of advice would you give us thinking about the posture that we need to be taking in the Middle East, in Egypt, in countries in transition? How do we overcome the perception, given our relationship with the previous governments, with President Mubarak? How can the United States now play the right supporting role in these transitions?
I think every policy is, I mean, the most pragmatic policy is value-based, especially for America. I don't believe in sheer, like, cynical, pragmatic approach anyway, because ultimately I believe that idealism is the best real politics. I have utter disdain for real politics, great theoreticians also here in the U.S. I have to put it very directly, and because in the end they always turn out to be less pragmatic than idealists. You know, for instance, my very good friend, late Richard Holbrooke, he was as you know, idealistic as one could get, and he was somebody who was all the time achieving the results. And I've seen all these great theoreticians, real politics, that is like all look down on, especially on small countries like us, and come on, all this, why are they just, why do they even breathe with that? We have to play this deep power politics and never achieved anything in their life except writing big volumes. And so, I don't mean anybody in particular whom you know, maybe, but the point that's the thing. I think that America has this amazing attraction for its values, and that's ultimately never underestimated. The soft power of America is amazing, and people are often doing this thing, underestimation. America is hated, and this and that, this and that. But I can tell you, I'm looking for is even like the regimes that are trying to capitalize on being besieged by America. It's by definition, loser's game. Because I don't see a country in the world where public is unfriendly towards America. There are no such country. So because of that reason, because America is a society of immigrants that understands those concepts better than any other country. And those countries know it. In today's internet era, there is no way. What really created, by the way, made it so far for America is internet. Because still, that really brought back central power and the power, soft power back to the United States. Look at what's happening in social media. And that's the tool to utilize. And so I would really agree that when you make false decisions based on value, because ultimately they pay off very well. And that was our experience, a small experience, but I'm sure they will pay off. Middle East, in Russia, in other people, geographic areas in the world.
Mr. President, in your remarks, you offered some key lessons from Georgia's revolution for the Middle East and North Africa. Let me ask a question from the perspective of those Egyptians, Tunisians that were empowered by what happened in the square that are coming to elections, coming to power through elections right now. What advice would you give them as you think about some, obviously you said this is very different circumstances, take that back. If you think about your situation in Georgia and what folks are dealing with in Tunisia today, two things stand out to me. One is, well, here's where it led to a revolution that ended Hosni Mubarak's reign. The military, obviously, was a source of continuity in Egypt, continuing to play a major role in the trajectory of the country. It reminds me at the start, I believe, of your presidency, when you were under pressure from some of the old guard to retain the security sector folks with links to the old element. You rejected that. But I think about the situation that folks are faced with Egypt, Tunisia today, with continuity on that military side. And second, in Georgia, there was an incredible sense of clarity in what the Georgian people wanted. When you're looking at polling numbers today, regardless of the politics of it, overwhelming aspiration to move towards Europe, to move towards NATO and the European Union. I think it's been very clear in Egypt, Tunisia, places what many of the people have been against. But it's less clear what they aspire to. If you think of the role of the military, the lack of clarity in what they aspire to, what kind of advice, how would you talk about these challenges for folks that want to advance reform in Egypt, Tunisia?
I think the main thing is not to wait. I think the worst mistake people might be making, okay, now it's not the time, we should be careful, maybe 1, 2, 3 years later. They are empowered. They are empowered by the street, but it's like, you know, how it's like a wave, right? So wave strikes, but then another wave comes, and it might be even more powerful, and run you over. Or it's a tide, it might be a tide. It comes forward, and then it retreats. It might drag you back. So surfing there, you should hurry up. You are brought by wave, and then it's nothing will be stable. So move forward. I mean, I think the biggest frustrating thing always is that when you say, okay, no, we have all these intricacies of society and we have all these stereotypes. You know, people thought we had all these stereotypes in Georgia. But I think what revolution has really changed after Rose Revolution, and what revolution after revolution, it's not about we were waving flags, but people started to think differently. We are a very ancient country. We had lots of our beliefs. We are several thousand years old. Georgian language is 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years old. Our alphabet, a little bit less, but very old as well. We had our own formed views about things, but then we start to move, and then we form our new views about present events. That's how it works. And if you say, no, we cannot touch this, we cannot touch that, we know that ahead of the curve. And that applies as much to the traditional societies in the Middle East. I don't see what is that peculiarity. I think this cultural relativism idea, frankly, is a way of justification of not doing something or doing it very well, or being basically not courageous enough for some people.
Let me ask one last question now with respect to Georgia, and then I'll turn to the audience to sketch my eye on that question. You're 8 years, more than 8 years since the Rose Revolution. You talked about Georgia being a failed state to 2003, I was in Georgia on the way to Afghanistan with NATO officials, and it was striking, the challenges that Georgia really was on the verge of being a failed state. You created a functioning society, created a functioning government, expanded civil liberties. But where are you in this evolution, in Georgia's evolution, in your mind, 8 years after the Rose Revolution? This is a big year for Georgia. The parliamentary elections coming up this fall.
Yeah, we are moving through. We have serious alterations in our political system. Parliament is being moved to another place, which is basically big psychological change in terms of mentality, political mentality in Georgia. We're being moved from the east to the west of the country, but this will be parliament that will be empowered to have much more say in all the forming the government. But I think the biggest challenge is still education, bringing up the younger generation much faster in much more efficient ways in totally different setting. That's the biggest challenge. We really are. We don't have 40 years to take country for investment. We actually have 10 to 12, 13 maybe years. That's it. But we're living in terms of modern communication enough. I think so. I'm not comparing myself or anybody from my people to Moses or something. But the story has the true value to it. That, you need to change of mentality to understand the value of freedom. You need to have. I think people in Georgia understood the value of freedom. Totally. I think they already knew it deep in their heart. They had it in their national memory because we've been fighting for a long time. But now they saw the benefits of it. They saw the new cities. They saw new schools, hospitals, skyscrapers, raising standards of life, more respect, more self-confidence, value of being master of your own work. And it's everything, it's nice to feel strong on your own. And these are the things that now should become part of the education system of new generation that will can bring it with, with all this. We have now 10,000 Americans invited to teach English in Georgia, or 1,500 are permanently in place. So 5 years old gets to school, and they get their laptop to take back home, and they get an American to teach them English. And this generation will grow very different. And it will be impossible to lead them back into anything, or to force them back.
If I may, let me turn to the audience and try to get trying to get started here. Please, when you're fine, introduce yourself. Richard White, Hudson Institute. Mr. President, you're very kind about saying that no people in the world dislike the United States. However, I can think of one exception from that, which is Pakistan. As you know, we've had an intense relationship with them, and recently was a cross-border incident. And one of the consequences of this is Pakistan has sealed the border, for the most part, for the passage of NATO supplies. And this has increased the importance of the Northern Distribution Network, which mostly goes through Russia and Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan. There's a small and important amount that goes through Georgia, and I wasn't sure when you met with the president whether you discussed how you might be able to expand this amount, given the dire situation NATO finds itself in at the moment. Thank you.
Well, Georgia, right now we have big railway constructed in Georgia that also connects into Central Asian railways. We have, incidentally also to Turkey, the European railway system. We have two major big airports that will open this year, the international ones, with all-weather and big runways. We have we have other logistics that's possible. We have big seaports, and also now, it's not the government of Afghanistan, but to imagine a Royal Caribbean for the first time coming to the region and opening for big harbor in Georgia. So there is infrastructure there, and obviously it's a very friendly country towards Americans, and very much part of this coalition effort. Now, it's not only us, it's other countries of Central Asia, but still it's politically very sound road, and I think economically as well very visible, and I think people are looking more and more at that. Communication of the
second row here, please.
I'm Elaine Serrero, Franklin Fellow with the Department of State, and I was the Executive Director of Foreign Aid through Education, and I did a lot of work on the country of Georgia. Thank you very, very much, sir, for your wonderful presentation, and particularly so for highlighting the developments and the achievements that Georgia has had under your leadership. What I'd like to ask is, particularly with regard to the U.S. program Millennium Challenge account, Georgia has been, I understand, very successful in utilizing a program. How do you see that playing in the developments that you have achieved over the last few years?
Well, I think what's very important that now we are working with FCC. We have got the second tranche. I just met with Director Johannes, who's a very, very nice man. And we are trying to speed it up a little bit because we are working on, we already have very nice work help from you on vocational training. We want to make every high school in Georgia like very sophisticated one. And we are working on opening already this year, or starting to open a big technology campus of a major American university in Georgia, the first of this kind in the region. We already are building a building which will be, I think, one of the best buildings worldwide for any university. Very original architecture, 40-story high, like really very attractive, will dominate skyline. But also the content is there. The content is Americans coming in and setting up a campus. And so we have shortlisted several major American universities. And this will be a major historic contribution of MCC for all time. Well, there at the level, MCC had built a major road that connected us to ethnic Armenian region, and actually that was something that was a political breakthrough. But now roads maybe are not as relevant as the education. That's the road to the future roads. So the other roads we are building, and I think by then, in 2-3 years, there will be no bad roads left to go to more than. But now we need something that will give really long-term breakthrough. It's really becoming a hub for our region, like South Korea is a region, like Singapore or Hong Kong used to be, now even more with the integration in China. So it's really, and that it needs educated population, it needs this global thinking, sophistication. You know, we did well at the program. First thing is that we will now have Intel factory in Georgia, and it's Georgia computers are big example. Georgia police is equipped with computers made in Georgia with some of the parts made, invented or done by Georgia. So that's a big deal, and it's patented like a Georgia product. So we need to institutionalize this more. And you know, there is potential. It's a small country that produces everything from, you know, small things, but to business jets, provided it creates good conditions.
Let me pick up a couple of questions up here.
My name is Adam Mack. I'm with Young Professionals in Foreign Policy. I was wondering, how has Georgia partnered with the private sector to ensure stability and development after your revolution? After your revolution?
Yes, well, as I said, we are the easiest place of Eastern and Central Europe to do business according to World Bank. According to EBRD survey, the conference survey, we are third least corrupt economy in Europe. According to Forbes, we are fourth least tax-burden country in the world after UAE, Qatar, and Hong Kong. We are, as I said, we have the whole number of procedures that are fastest in the world. We have this watchdog principle for many businesses. So, in many respects, for instance, if you do diligence for proper transaction, you don't really need lawyers. So maybe law firms suffered most of all, and maybe the only business that really suffered in Georgia were law firms. As a lawyer, I don't regret that at all. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, Georgian economy has quadrupled almost in nominal terms. Is that right? We've got a very good infrastructure project. Where now, as I said, we develop new cities, and the way we develop them, we created roads there, electricity lines, water systems, and then business followed, all in parallel. Because then they came in high-rise buildings and all kinds of stuff. it's a good party. They trust us. When we say stuff is good, they usually listen. But we have flat taxes. As I said, we have 98% of Georgians said in the Gallup survey 5-6 years ago that they count, or 6-7 years ago, that they counted corruption firsthand. Now it's less than 0.2% or 0.1%, and even then, when we observed what it was most medical hospitals. And again, to go back to this, now private business has just built 150 new hospitals, which means that even that will disappear because it will no longer be just putting money in the pockets of the public hospital doctors. So from that point of view, yeah, I mean, can you imagine, we are investing in an economy, and with all these complications in our geopolitics, we call the economic growth in crisis, and after the war, the year before last year, 6.5, 6.6%, and last year just under 7%. This year we are expecting double digits if all the economy doesn't go to power.